The springs are like they're your energy input device. They're your battery. They're your like your engine, whatever. And then the surface
They're a storage
you jump on
device, actually, but yeah.
the surface. I'm trying like the surface is what is how you as the user.
Well, let's break this down, because you always use your racket, ball. I don't know anyone that plays tennis anymore, but use your example.
Well, that's now we're just talking about
Jump surface.
Jump surface.
Yeah.
So for breaking down all the components, because they all matter in different ways, the surface itself is just a big. Well, again, the way I think about it, it's the way that you as the user engage with the trampoline itself, with the energy, with everything. That's your point of input as the user, is the trampoline surface. And if you can imagine a tennis racket, I used to play badminton, so I thought a badminton racket, you take it out of the case, you whip it around, it's super, it just cuts through the air. You put it back in the racket and you start waving it around again. There's a lot of drag. You can't whip through the air, and you wouldn't play badminton with the thing still on, like the cover still on the badminton racket. You'd miss the thing every time. And that's kind of how trampoline surfaces work as well, because you have the black poly surface everyone's used to seeing, the black bouncy thing you jump on, called the jump surface, the bed, the mat, lots of different names for it. But that is a very air-resistant surface.
Well, and without even saying different surfaces, like just the theoretical shape on the round, like, and even if you're not a trampoline expert, you've probably seen these wicked awesome gymnasts in the Olympics, and they're jumping on these trampolines, and you're seeing this big stretch curve on the trampoline where it's dipping down nice and deep in the middle of the rectangular trampoline. The problem is with a round trampoline, you're activating every single one of those springs all the way around the trampoline. The whole bed is drooping at the same rate. So the whole thing is moving, and you're moving way more air than you can. And so you are getting into the trampoline materials, and we deal with a whole bunch of different materials, so we can make a round trampoline perform a little bit better. But fundamentally with a round on a bed level, you're still moving way more fabric than you should be, which is losing energy. And that's probably what we should have started with. Trampolines fundamentally are an energy storage device.
Yeah.
Your weight, affected by gravity, has energy, is coming down. The amount of energy that returns you back vertically into the air, and the efficiency of that formula, is the performance of your trampoline. You can adjust it here and there for how it feels, but more or less, that's the dilemma with a cheap trampoline, is you have energy loss from your frame, from your springs, from your bed, and actually from your safety pad, which is really overlooked. They're cheap.
They're cheap. Yeah, that's basically it. It's just that became the ubiquitous trampoline because Walmart, other big box stores carried them.
And you put springs around it, and it's now called a trampoline.
Yeah, and you put a little net around it, and it's now a playpen.
But that's actually dangerous. We never touched on that one. That's very relevant for parents.
So what's a myth about round trampolines? That they're a trampoline, for one.
Well, we should talk about like the safety element around trampolines, because the safety is really critical. Like, you want an optimally safe environment with a trampoline. You kids play hockey, they wear a helmet. Fair enough. It's a reasonable thing to do to make yourself optimally safe and still have fun and play the sport. Trouble is, there is a chance two kids are going to get on a trampoline at the same time. When you have a round trampoline, all your springs are moving at the same time. Your entire jump surface is being activated at the same time, which means when that bed and those springs and that energy is coming back up, if it hits another child, the majority of that energy is going in that other child. And that's what's going to cause double bouncing. So we always advise, and everyone advises, one at a time on a trampoline. Life happens. Sometimes rules aren't followed. These are predetermined to suggest and cause additional energy to go into that other child and double bounce them. It's just inherently bad. They're not an inherently safe device. There's nothing good about a round trampoline. So safety-wise, huge caveat with a round trampoline. You would be ignorant, or you would have no clue what you're talking about to think that a round trampoline is safe, because any trampoline expert or professional would tell you there's nothing good about them other than they're inexpensive.
Yeah, because the shape is what influences the positioning of the springs relative to you as the jumper, and how you're engaging with those springs, how you're engaging with the energy storage device, how you're efficiently making use of that.
So we should talk about rounds here again just because I love beating up on rounds because there's nothing good about them. So going to your point here, the frame. We haven't talked about the frame. And when you have a wicked awesome trampoline and you get that big droop and the big stretch in the bed, you're putting a ton of stress on one part of the frame. And that's why round trampolines can be made cheaper, is because the force is evenly distributed around the entire frame. So therefore your entire frame can be smaller, like smaller in diameter. The tubing can be smaller, like thinner.
Yes, because it's a more structurally efficient shape. A circle, a round shape is very structurally strong. It's very hard to collapse a circle.
Submarines, eggs, like it's a great shape for just being inherently strong.
Yes, it is not a great shape for the characteristics you're looking to get out of an optimal trampoline experience.
And that's where we start getting into the other shapes. Like you get a rectangular trampoline, now you can focus more and more energy on fewer springs. Fewer springs is less energy loss and less trampoline movement, so less air restriction, is everything starts getting better when you get a rectangular shape. So you're going to go from a round on one end of the spectrum, rectangular on the other end of the spectrum, which gives us our octagons, which we've done for years and have been made since the 1970s. They're actually a pretty good trampoline. They're the octagon or the 12 side is okay. The octagon with the 8 sides is kind of a happy medium between economics and efficiency and frame design and your rectangular performance. It starts enlarging your sweet spot, a little bit less risk of double bouncing, more efficiency and performance.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
Still, yeah, it's the one benefit to like an octagon trampoline or a round trampoline is just the surface area, kind of the play area is kind of a bigger, more open area relative to a rectangle. Rectangle is going to benefit in your lateral space, forward to back. If you're doing any type of maneuver, you've got a lot more space back and forward. And you wouldn't necessarily think this, but you mentioned this earlier. Life happens, more than one person gets on a trampoline, and you mentioned the reasons why it's very unideal to have multiple people on a round trampoline because of the energy transfer. Now on a rectangular trampoline, believe it or not, that is if you're going to break the rules, if you're going to have multiple people on a trampoline at once, it is the optimal shape to do so because of what Luke mentioned. On a rectangular trampoline, you're primarily using fewer springs when you're jumping. This is getting really the weeds. The springs on the short sides, the ends, those are mainly for stability. The springs on the sides, those are your power springs. That's where you're putting the energy into those, and that's what's punching you up in the air. So because you're using the springs directly adjacent from you on your side, if you're jumping on one end of the rectangular trampoline, you can have someone else jumping on the other side, and you're still sharing the stability springs on the ends, but the power springs where you really put that energy in, you're really just using your own.
We see this in an extreme case in trampoline parks. There's a lot of trampoline parks out there with 50-foot long trampolines. And the reason they're not getting broken ankles left, right, and center is because when those children are jumping, they're a fairly skinny trampoline that's really long. When they're jumping, like you're saying, they're only using a few trampoline springs. And then the kid 5 feet away is using a totally different set of trampoline springs. Maybe 20% of their energy is at risk of double bouncing versus 90 or 100% that you'd see in a round trampoline or hedging into a octagonal trampoline, but mainly the rounds. You start getting away from that as soon as you get to more rectangular of a shape. Round trampolines are just garbage.
How I don't know, how in the weeds do we want to get in this pot? Like we can go pretty deep. What are we trying to accomplish with this type of
the marketing guys are going go deep.
Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Full of grace is what you'll probably be saying if you're on a round trampoline with somebody else. It's a prayer joke.
Just don't do a round trampoline. There's nothing good about them. Everything foundationally in trampoline performance starts in a rectangular shape, and that's why gymnastics clubs are rectangular. Any kind of pro training is generally rectangular. We are starting to see the off-axis guys in the last 5-10 years start using more square stuff. We give them a square that performs like a rectangle by doing what we do with the springs, but again, we're cheating it.
They're making a pseudo rectangle out of a square.
It looks like a square, but it would fit in a rectangular hole because of how it performs and how we've tuned the springs, because that actually gives them the performance they're looking for. But on the flip side, they have the big crash area, which is listen to the customer. What's that?
Nice pun.
Yeah. You listen to the customer, and the customer will tell you, hey, I want to do an off-axis flip, and I need to make sure I've got lots of room to spot my landing. And that's why they're after that rectangular shape. we want to secretly give them more performance because they're like, you need to get more air so you can spot your landing and give you more time to spot your landing. We tune it in for them because you get more performance out of a rectangle. So
you get that. Yeah, there's a performance aspect of it is one thing. There's also just the balance and the fine-tuned control you can get and consistency you get out of the bounce. I feel like a square, if not tuned, can be a lot more erratic. It behaves a little bit like a round does.
Yeah. In
the sense where when you're jumping on a round trampoline, you're getting because you're always kind of different space away from the springs. You'll be closer to these over here, but further away from over there, and it kind of throws you a bit more.
There's no stability in it. Like you feel it when you're so. Imagine driving a car that's got a bunch of tires that are low, and you just feel this thing going all over the road. You almost feel like you're drunk. That's what you get with a poorly tuned trampoline. Is you just get poor performance, poor stability, and you're not sure-footed. And that's incredibly important when you're using a trampoline for performance uses. When you're trying to train, you need repetitive performance. You need to know exactly what's going to happen when you put this energy into that trampoline, exactly how it's going to respond. And that's really what you get when you have a sure-footed, very optimized, tuned trampoline. And that's really easy for us to do when someone says, hey, I want this rectangular trampoline. We're like, yes, we can do that for you. And then you get the guys that say the square is like, okay, we can do that for you. You just made our lives a lot harder. We could do that for you too. But yeah, like you're saying, and that's what we originally started off with in our parks, was we were using a competitor's rectangular square trampoline, and it was really, really soft, mushy. You weren't sure-footed. It gave decent performance, but
yeah,
I wouldn't be confident when I was really putting my energy into it.
It felt like a big circus net, you know?
Yeah.
It just felt kind of secure on it because it was huge, this huge open space, referring to the super quad. And it was the industry standard status quo at the time. You didn't know any better. We learned better. This calls back to a previous podcast where we talked about our experiences through COVID, how we really looked inward now at developing these new trampolines and putting all this extra attention towards the trampolines themselves. And we learned that, yeah, you can still have the innate benefits of a square, the size, all the extra space all the way around it, well, without compromising on the control and consistency and accuracy of a rectangular.
So the marketing guys are asking us for a story related to this, and the one that comes to mind is when Tanner Fox, the YouTube celebrity, the trampoline guy, who's now a car guy, but he used to be big into trampolines and scootering of all things, came up to our facility in Vancouver, and he jumped on one of our square super trampolines, which we weren't making them at the time, so we bought them from another company who we work with in the States, and we worked our magic on them. And we made that trampoline the Crazy Tune, the Crazy. This is a foundation for the Crazy Tune. This is our Crazy Ape 14x14. We kind of worked that magic into it. And Tanner walked away from that trip to Vancouver saying, I want one of those. And this is before he built, what was the name of that place he built down in California? We actually went down there and we helped him figure out the ceiling heights and stuff that he would need. But he said he wanted our tune and our arrangement. He didn't just want to buy the other guy's stuff.
It's ironically, it was the same product, but the same jumping surface, our frame. But if you have a solid frame, you have a solid frame. It was what we did, the tune. That was our special thing. And he's like, I've never jumped on a trampoline like this before. This is the best bouncing super quad I've jumped on.
Well, he was used to going to places like Tempest and stuff like that in California. And oh man, we went to Tempest. That was bad. Like, the trampolines could use some tuning, they could use some work, but they could also just use some maintenance.
But yeah. Fair point.
They've been successful, I'll give them that one. But anyway, yeah. So Tanner walked away going, "Hey, I want your guys' setup, not just the cookie cutter off the shelf one." And we never ended up providing him that. I think he tore that facility apart. We just kind of let him get the cookie cutter one. But Brongart, Tanner Brongart, were we? Oh yeah, I guess we got the 10x12 coming for Brongart. That's not public yet. We got a fancy trampoline going to Brongart. We're going to deliver that one to Kansas in a few months, or in a month. Right?
Yeah.
In a few weeks.
First 10x12 hyper tramp. It's going to be pretty spicy.
So again, Tanner, being an off-axis guy, casually was looking at, he was looking at a rectangle, or really saying, hey, I really want the square. And And we said, hey, we'll give you the best of both worlds. We're going to give you basically a 14 by 14, but made properly as a 10 by 12 jump surface ties. And this thing's an animal. I can't.
Tyler Farello's got a square. He's got
a crazy tune, 14 by 14. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's got to start making some videos with it. So if you want to see it, go bug him and make a video with it.
He's busy cliff jumping now. We did hook him up with a pretty sweet trampoline. So there's a lot you can do with trampoline shapes. The biggest thing is you want to get away from the round shape. Rectangular is perfect, and there's a lot we can do with a square, but rectangular is the best shape for trampoline performance.
And they cost a buttload more because a rectangular shape is very opposite to the circle. Again, it's unfortunate for trampolines that while the circle is the most structurally efficient shape, it's terrible for trampolines, and vice versa. A rectangle is terrible for structure. It needs a lot more reinforcing.
We essentially need to point load the We need to point load the frame. We need to take all that energy, even if you have a 300-pound football player of a dad that's jumping on that trampoline and he's point loading your frame at the crest of performance, we need to make sure that frame is not going to collapse at its weakest point, which is where all the stress is going.
Which is the sweet spot. The sweet spot is right in the middle of the trampoline, and that's where the long sides, you imagine the long sides of a rectangular trampoline, that's where the long sides are the weakest, right in the center. So your rectangular frames, this goes back to our original comment about trampolines being energy storage devices. Anything that takes away from the efficiency of you putting in energy and energy coming back out takes away from your performance. A saggy frame. Finally, some of the competition. I saw an Acon ad and they're talking about saggy frames. And it's like...
Oh man, their ads crack me up. Yeah. They finally realize. Well, you know what? Like, this is a podcast to come. Basically, think of trampolines like Formula One racing. They have absolutely zero extra weight. Every element of aerodynamic performance is considered. Every single thing about that race matters. They're changing out their tires all the time. Everything is built to the point of failure for the pinnacle of performance. And when you get to a crazy tune, we took it a step back to make sure that you don't have to service this thing every time you jump on it, and it's actually durable. But everything has been considered. Like, we'll do some spring testing. We already did some spring testing in some of our other podcasts you can check out. We can stretch our springs so freaking far and pull them off, and they're absolutely fine. And that's what you need, because you're pushing the limits of what that spring can handle. And if you threw a cheap, crappy spring in there, you overstretch it and it wouldn't work. Same with the frame. Everything about these things matters into the smallest of details. We start factoring in the drag of the spring as he breaks our spring tester. Rotating, the drag of the spring rotating on the frame has an effect on performance. Everything about these things matters. And the shape is just foundational. Like, if we're forced to give a customer a square or an octagonal frame, it really starts limiting us. Now you're getting fancy. Well, you could also just check out podcast 2. These aren't even podcasts. These are full-on YouTube videos. Don't break it like the marketing guys did. I like how you put this in front of my face before you stretched in 200 pounds of force.
This is a 10-inch Olympic Pro Springs piano wire spring, wide coil.
Right beside a 65-inch TV, so if this thing's not worth its weight, it's about to destroy our brand new TV, which we haven't even used.
This is how many inches of stretch and what the force is on it, so let's...
So what this does is, as Armand is increasing the length of this spring, it tells us the exact force that's on this spring. We calculate everything in these trampolines to ensure that you're getting the optimal, deep, lofty fall into the crest of the bottom, and then the tight, whippy snap back up into the air. That gives you that snappy, responsive trampoline you need for professional training. Or if you're going into off-axis, we can give you that deep, lofty bounce that's not going to be snappy and jarry. Honestly, so if you land on your arm and you bail, you're not going to snap your arm. There's a lot of considerations that go into giving the perfect combination.
I was gonna say real quick here, so just to see, we got 0 inches of stretch. It's just the 10-inch spring at rest, 0 pounds on it, and we're going to put 2 feet of stretch on this. So
I don't know if you need to do this on camera. You can... Actually, maybe you should put your hand back in case it snaps in my face.
Trusting. All right, 24 inches. We got 87 pounds of force on that spring.
Uh-oh. Now the other guy's going to rip off our springs. We won't tell you which trampoline or which component this is used on. So what we're looking for here is we want to make sure all the springs coil and return back nice and tight. So one more, Mondo. Get all the pressure off. Wrong direction. Oh, he wants to test it again. Cycle counting is also really important. You want these things to be able to stretch over and over and over. So this is music wire steel. That is more than 24 inches. Yeah. So what he's showing is that this hasn't lost any of its memory. If this spring was damaged, it wouldn't have the same force as it's pulled to that same amount. And we're going to see that because it's going to close completely. One more, please. No, I was saying one more inch down so I can get the thing off. And there we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out of here. And now we're going to give this thing a snap. And you see how it rattles? It's not a limp noodle. If it was a limp noodle, this spring would be toast. Now, based on the results in Armand testing it multiple times, we knew this was 100% and there's had no degradation. And that's a good example here. So as we see this thing being floppy, you're not hearing any snapping. That's because this spring is actually permanently damaged.
I think yesterday I put 15 inches on that one.
So this is about trampoline shape differences. And you can see we've gone into a tangent here about trampoline springs. All of these details are so important. But the best thing is to start with a good foundation, which is not a round trampoline. Do not buy a round trampoline. Buy a used rectangle. We'll help you fix it up. We'll help you get wicked performance out of it. Don't buy a round. You know what? If you get an octagon trampoline versus a round, an octagon's a step up. We can work with that. I mean, your favorite trampoline is a 16-foot octagon just for family recreational use.
For just like everyday, just cause it feels, I would take very different trampolines now that we make them over that. But for a long time there, the 16 with the Pro Spring upgrade and the higher full surface.
There's still a lot. Like, if we want to get really technical, there's a lot we can do with an octagon. It's just, it's not the same as a rectangle.
Go ask Acon what the K factor is on their springs. See what they tell you.
Or Acon can send us a spring and we'll put it to a test. I would love that. Yeah. Or what the K factor was. So basically the K factor is the spring constant. So we're looking at the variable in which the trampoline spring is reacting at and how consistent it is. And this spring has the exact same K factor and is extremely predictable and consistent, which is exactly what you need when you're doing professional training. When you get a K factor all over the map, you have absolutely no accuracy or consistency. And that's what you get with an overseas trampoline. You get what you pay for.
And we're the guys that last episode said, money, just make it awesome. And that's...
Unfortunately, we do have to build trampolines for a budget sometimes. I love it when there's the clients that come to just say, I want the best. Like the guy in Arizona there, Phoenix. Privileged dealing with him. I love that.
The guy in the Arctic who just built a $4,000 rebounder on our Apex platform.
That you were wall running on. That was pretty sweet. Yeah.
This little 5.5 by 8, not even 8-foot trampoline.
Not quite a Bellicon at that point.
This was the ultimate rebounder. This was super fun. We got some videos on our channel on it, but one of them was, I actually was like, you know what? This thing is wall runnable. It was meant for a guy's home gym, and it's like, we got to be able to do more than just jump on this thing. So,
but again, that was a rectangular rebounder. That wasn't a square rebounder. It wasn't a round rebounder. And there's so much more we can do when we get the right shape. It's really critical. It's your foundation. So do not buy a round trampoline if we haven't said it enough.
If you want a trampoline, a round isn't a trampoline.
It's a fucking piece of shit. Just don't do it. Call us. We'll help you. We'll guide you. We won't even charge you. Just don't do it. All right. Like, comment, subscribe. Or just freaking call us and we'll set you up.